degree program that we run because our alumni encouraged us to do so, and in encouraging us to do so, asked us to focus on how business leaders should take decisions under conditions of uncertainty. And thinking about that, we decided that one of the best ways that we could help people understand that particular challenge was to bring top practitioners back to the university to explain their own experience in similar situations. As part of that, we also decided that we would celebrate the contributions that our great faculty members have made. And the culmination starts here with the annual Robert Mundell Lecture as part of the series on global risk. Now, for those of you who don't know, Robert Mundell is a Canadian economist who taught here in the early 1960s. And while he was teaching here in the early 1960s, he drafted a short research note that was published in the journal that's called the American Economic Review that was about a theory of optimum currency areas that speculated about what would be the requirements if we were to form a giant multinational currency or do the reverse. Take national currencies and divide them up at the regional level. What would be the optimum criteria for the space that would be governed by a single currency? Now, the reason I mention that in such great detail is because I've brought with us this evening, and our speaker is actually one of the very few individuals who's taken that theoretical idea and decided to experiment with it in practice. His name is Romano Prodi, and in addition to having been a minister of industry in Italy, the leader of Italy's largest public sector holding conglomerate, twice prime minister, the only person ever to defeat in open election Silvio Berlusconi, and he did it twice for good measure, and the person who completed the single currency as president of the European Commission and opened the European Union to its historic enlargement to Central and Eastern Europe, which means if you vote for the Lega, he's the man who destroyed the European Union almost single-handedly. Now, what's interesting is that in celebrating this history that we have with Robert Mundell, this aspiration that we have to understand what it's like to take decisions under conditions of uncertainty, probably the most important decision that Professor Prodi made was to ensure that Italy would participate in Europe's economic and monetary union, a decision that brought great benefits to the Italian economy on a huge number of scales, but has also engendered significant controversy. Controversy about Italy and its economic policy, controversy about Italy's role in Europe, controversy about the future of the European Union. And having said that, I have to admit that as an analyst, as a faculty member, this is a decision that I celebrate on an annual basis in my teaching about European financial markets and in my teaching about Europe's West European political economies. I think it's an historic decision. But as an historic decision, it was one that could not be anticipated fully in advance. It was one that took tremendous courage, relied on tremendous effort to accomplish, and that remains subject to considerable political investment from one Italian administration to the next. It's no guaranteed thing, not something to be taken for granted. And so I think it's important that we celebrate this political leadership in initiating this decision. I think it's important that we recognize the real tension that it created and the cost that it imposed. And I think it's important that we all join in thanking Professor Prodi, not just for what he's accomplished, but for what he's going to say to us this evening. Please join me in welcoming Professor Romano Prodi.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor, for your very, very kind introduction. And you correctly told that I have taken many controversial decisions. Even today, coming out of my home here, a man with a dog told me, "Tu hai rovinato l'Italia. You devastated Italy." You know, and so the decision taken are very controversial, but still, I am happy to have taken this decision. You know, but today. I have been asked to talk, let's say, for the future of Europe and for the future decision that have must be taken, you know. And of course, I can be even more. I have to take it.
If you will, so we can use
It's
the
so strange.
give it a try. I know everything is strange these days.
Okay. Uh, even you know. To try to understand the change we had in the last months and the consequence for the future, because we never had in the last years so decision, so so big change in the decision concerning the future of Europe that we had since July. I last time I came here, I was very pessimistic about Europe, you know, because there was no possibility of agreement. There was North, South fighting each other. And now I am, of course, much more, let's say, open to, to positive outcomes of European policy. Because we had since July a policy, let's say, of a beginning policy of solidarity in Europe that was never possible, and you know, and we arrived to share the debt among countries, and this was, let's say, an anathema. This was absolutely forbidden and impossible. And so the substantial aid for countries in need and, you know, really a policy called a policy for the next generation. The name was not by chance. It was a name meaning that will be a long-lasting policy. Of course, names in politics are not always respected, but I was really taken by this change. Of course, the total amount of the Commission proposal is not as huge as the American policy for a similar dimension in terms of GDP and in terms of population. The American package has been more substantial, but 750 billions euros is not a small amount of money. Is really without any precedent, and you know why this change in European policy. First of all, the casual change, COVID-19. Why is a change? Because we had crisis also before, but in this case, nobody could blame political mistake of any country. You know, there was no possibility of telling, look, it's because the Italian government or the Greek government, like in the installation. And so it's put, was the first reason of that. But the second reason is that because of the tension, because of the problem, it was more and more clear that even the big German economy was absolutely too small to compete with China or United States. this also because of COVID, this change has been evident in the last month. The real symbol of this change is the, let's say, increase of importance of big data, of the internet companies, and so on and so on. And in many cases, you find in the German politician speech mention to dimension of Google, Apple, and the real very weak position of the European companies. We have to remember that in the biggest 20 world companies working on the new communication, I don't know even how to call them, there is only one European in 20, and it is 19th. So this gives you the idea that you have to change, otherwise even big Germany could not. But there is also another reason. Additional insecurity concerning the American policy and the American protection. This has been very, very important. The message of President Trump, which from some part justified that Europe must spend more in defense. I think that this is correct without any doubt. But the controversial way in which it's been exposed and the menace also to Germany for in case of different behavior has injected in in most part of the European government the idea that you could not trust 100% on the American protection. The other reason is Brexit. It's my experience that you could have never been able to take this decision with Britain. And of course, I always thought that Brexit is a loss for Europe, is a loss because not only a remarkable economy, not only because it's a great democracy, but also because the most powerful European army, and also because the international image of UK, half of the world was looking at Europe with British glasses. If you think to India, to most part of Africa, but in terms of sharing that with UK, you could not take this position because that and also because Germany was also pushed by the fact that for the first time you had a common position shared by Italy, France, and Spain together with a unitarian strategy asking to Germany and frugal countries to change their policy. But the remarkable surprise has been that the German Chancellor has changed policy, but all the German public opinion followed the Chancellor. I was absolutely surprised because it is a religious change because the zero deficit budget, was some sort of Bible for German policy, and then you pass from that to 8-9% deficit and from no solidarity with others to a policy of sharing debt. And so I was thinking that you could have in Germany an opposition by businessmen or by not even Bavarians. They were not so opposed to this policy. And this is one surprising event, consequence of all the change in my opinion, I listed before. Stop concerning the past, but don't think that everything is already done, because we are now starting a process that is much more difficult and much longer than you really read generally in the specialized press. Uh, uh, because new difficult procedures are needed. First of all, a general problem that is a tragedy for Europe, unanimity in the Council. This is, without unanimity, Europe could be much stronger and much more advanced than now, but this eternal problem is still, unanimity is still needed, even in putting in concrete action the last decision. And Poland will put a veto, are putting a veto if the civil rights are mentioned as a condition for that. And there are basic problems, concerning independence of judiciary, freedom of media, but I do think that politically this is important, but the strength of Poland and Hungary is less now than before the European elections. Because in the last European elections, the populistic party and the anti-European groups have decreased in importance. And so there, and even more because of Brexit. Poland and Hungary now are alone in this policy of, let's say, reacting to the solidarity decision. And from the other side, this is Poland and Hungary. From the other side, Holland, let's say the frugal countries, guided by Holland, insist that this is a one-shot decision and does not imply any real share of the debt. It's only exceptional due to the fact, but this is not a change of policy. And the most important condition of the frugal is they want to approve it together with the 21-27 European budget. Let's say not to increase the long-term budget of the European Union. But the Parliament is strongly in favor of the increase of the budget. So you have another internal controversial problem. I do think the compromise in this case of the budget has always been found and will be found even in this case. But the insistence in the last debate of the Parliament in increasing the budget for health, research, and environment is still strong. But then there is the need of approval not only by the European Parliament, but of the 28 European national parliaments. This will probably come as a consequence, but is a real problem. And so we are in a particular moment of power arm twisting between the parliament and the commission and the council, and so the mediation will not be easy and will not be very soon. Why? Because as a consequence, and even this is not well understood, as a consequence, you are obliged to open the chapter of their own resources, let's say of taxation by Europe. And taxation is seen by many countries, by quite a few countries, as a natural privilege and monopoly of the states. This is the basic principle, but there are 2 points in which this principle will be violated. First is carbon tax, because there is now a general shared view that we need a strong policy in this field. And Europe has always been guiding since the Kyoto Protocol that was approved only because of Europe against United States and China that voted against it. Till now, there is this shared vision by the most part of European, but taxation is another thing. But you need carbon tax if you want to have resources to have a really green policy. And the second taxation point that will immediately come is taxation of the great oligopoly of internet use. Let's say Google, Apple, Amazon, and so on. And why is coming? Because France is strongly advocating it. And following what I told in the beginning of the weakness in this field, there is also a shared idea by many European governments that the first step to enter into the field is to oblige the American or Chinese companies to pay taxation on the profits that were done in Europe, and so these 2 new taxes, in my opinion, are possible, even with the theological opposition of many or quite a few countries to the European taxation. But to do next generation ban, recovery plan, but to do what? This is our instruction coming from the Commission that are incredible, analytical, pedantic, incredible, and nobody talks about that. The main goals are very clear: promoting the social, economic, and territorial cohesion of the Union, strengthening the economic and social resilience and adjustment capacity, mitigating the social aspect of the crisis, and supporting the green and digital transition. This economically the most important point, digital and green transition. And this is why the taxation probably will enter in these fields. The problem of green taxation that is ecumenically shared by everybody is terribly difficult to tackle because the goals are ambitious, decrease of emissions, compared to 1990, 55% minus in 2030, and neutrality before 2050. So very clear goal. But pollution generated by Europe is depending upon statistics from 6 to 9% of pollution. And the cost of a green policy is very high. And so I do expect that in few years, the cost of European industry will increase so much, and there will be some sort of reaction. This, of course, if there is not an agreement with China and the United States. So will depend a lot about elections. Trump certainly will not agree, but in my opinion, probably Biden will sign again, will re-enter in the Paris Agreement. And so you could have also some bargain in order not to put the European cost in an unbearable situation. But this is not given for granted. And even China is really changing the attitude vis-a-vis the future of the pollution, but they are by far still the biggest polluters in the world. And so I don't know if China is disposed to make this change. Also because now you have a high number of electrical power stations, coal fed in China under construction now. So this because of COVID, the number has been increasing. So this goal is not easy. Is not easy to get. And overall, the world, starting from Europe, we have an over-optimism of the number of jobs created by renewable energy and the decreasing cost of renewable energy. The progress has been remarkable, but not as we are accustomed to say. So the negotiation will be long, and probably the first money will be allotted in the late spring of next year, the first 10%, but the instruction given from the Commission to the member state, as I hinted you before, are analytical in an incredible way. I'll give you some example. Each country need to list the installment of the GV electrical lines capacity and the production of transportation at least of 1 million tons or renewable hydrogen, and so on and so on and so on. But really, it's point by point, ensure that before 2025, the provision of, we are in any total provision of European digital entity for all the European citizens. Very, very precise. And you have to double the European production of semiconductors before 225, let's say tomorrow, and then you go on with the use of big data, the quantity of big data, the quantity of cloud services, and for the digital transition, you have to list the remuneration, the renovation of the residential building, the ecological number of ecological farms, and so on, so on, so on, so on. And this is very important. You have each member state has to bring to the Commission a biannual reports and control and all the macroeconomic consequence of the decision taken. So, which is my conclusion, that if this process go on, there is an enormous increase of power of European administration, but a jump in it. So this will provocate a reaction of some member states, in which Holland will not easily accept this biannual analytical relation of all the progress done with a judgment of the Commission if this is the progress is appropriate or not. So the condition for this change in Europe are strict because it is a radical change. If it is put in action, is really as big as the introduction of the euro, or even more important. And this is this is in a moment in which I don't think that in any result of American elections there will be a change in American policy vis-à-vis China, and so all the attention will move more and more to Asia, and so the role of Europe will not be easy because of the increase of this tension. Even if the attitude of American attitude will change, and it will be much easier to implement this policy if Biden wins. Because first of all, will not deal with Europe, treating Europe as a dangerous competitor or even an enemy, and will not try to divide Europe. That Trump has done many times to do in the past. And what is more debatable, but I believe this will be done, the United States will not have a special deal with the United Kingdom. Why I do think that? Because the Democratic Party and many Americans, they are worried or a possible step back in the Irish policy. And so an agreement with Europe is indispensable to avoid a split between let's call the two Irelands, and so there will be a difference. And then I do think that if Biden wins, there will be an agreement on the famous Boeing Airbus controversial and the taxation related and custom duties related to this taxation. And in the end, the environment policy could be much easier with Biden than with Trump. So I do think that the American policy vis-à-vis China will not be much different, but vis-à-vis Europe, there will be a lot different. And so the result of next American election will be very important to the implementation of the difficult European project and the problems I listed together. Our relation with China, because of this last event, China is still working to divide Europe with very soft manner, but maybe you are knowledgeable of the so-called 17+1 project, in which China has made an institutional agreement with 17 European countries, 9 or 10 of them belonging to the European Union and the other outside the Union, with special treatment. And this is clearly an effort to divide Europe. And so this will have also the consequence of an effort to divide more Europe from the United States. And so the problems of the election are important also for influencing the Chinese policy vis-à-vis Europe. And ending the list of the problems, not because of the new European agreement, but linked to them, and because of the COVID-19, the broad competition will change. Globalization will not end, because I don't want to make too analytical on that, but the interest even between China and the United States are too much interconnected. And this is the reason, in my opinion, that the custom fightings stopped a bit, because 40%, almost more than 1/3 of Chinese exports are generated by multinationals, and so you can go to a point. But on technology, there is no possibility of agreement, because, and this is why Huawei case is so important, because it's not linked to economic interest, is linked to security, or not even to security, but to the technological priority, to the technological domination. And this is absolutely impossible to mediate. So we shall pass from a global a trend to the global competition to not to destroy the global competition, but to correct this with regional policies. Let's say the three main regions, United States, Europe, and China, will uh, bring back inside their own region part of the important production. I call it the mask effect, in which Europe, even for such a simple product, was in a tragic situation simply because nobody was producing any more mask because nobody used mask in Europe. But this now will extending to the value chain, to the most important value chains. No one of the big regions can be without some role uh, being, let's say, out of the basic value chains. Let's say uh, chips or communication instrument or so on, so on, so on. And so we will start a process of reshoring. How deep, how much, I don't think that will be total or high percentage, also because the companies that went investing abroad now are working also for the domestic market in which they operate. Let's say German motor car companies in China, they work for the Chinese market. So they will never reshore to this point. But you will have the necessity of the minimal production of the basic needs inside. And so this will accept probably the case of the digital economy in which for Europe the resharing will be much more difficult. There will be an effort by European government, but maybe too late. But the effort to arrive to that, as I told you, concerning taxation, will be done in the next year. I doubt that there will be successful because we never had in history such a big, profitable companies as we have now in the United States or China, because Amazon and Alibaba, they are twins. They're absolutely twins, So generally, American companies are more active. They are exclusively active in Europe, as Amazon does, Alibaba is. But in terms of dimension, they are very, very comparable. And so this is the field in which I don't think that reshoring will be easy. But in the other fields, we shall assist to this case of reshoring. I've been too long, sorry. Excuse me.
Thank you very much. That was fun. Now, I want to open this up to questions and comments, including questions from our friends in the web. If you are a Zoom participant and you want to ask a question, please do ask your question in the question and answer box, not in the chat box, but in the question and answer box. I already see one has popped up, and so I know you guys know where that is. If you're in the room and you want to ask a question, then just put up your hand and I'll recognize you. But I do need you to wait for the microphone to get to you, because without the microphone, we won't hear you up front. But even more important, our colleagues on Zoom land won't hear you out there. Before I do turn it over to you guys, though, I do have a couple of questions I want to ask you. One is about your rather sanguine attitude toward the European Parliament and its willingness to come to a deal. Now, if I remember correctly, you became president of the European Commission shortly after the European Parliament showed its teeth to the Council for the first time and caused the previous European Commission to close early. So I guess, has the European Parliament got weaker since then, or is it just less determined to impose its will than it was on Jacques Santer?
No, the European Parliament has become stronger. And also, look, last week, I think was very provocating as it happens in the new institution. Always the new democracy were born fighting parliament and government, and the parliament to have a mission minus 55% is an incredible goal, and the parliament voted 60. This is a provocation, in my opinion, because it's. But so because they want to show that their power is increased.
I guess the reason I wanted to press on that is because it's not just that they want more money, they want different money, and they want that rule of law conditionality. And it seems like a fairly complex menu to be ignored, but it's also a complex menu to address without reopening the negotiations.
Yes, but the parliament wants more quality and quantity, both, because they insist on a more substantial budget. They insist to write to 60% that is more money, and they are tough in this moment for the civil rights of the two countries. So is a double, and this is why I hinted before that negotiation will be complex, because it's not, if you want 60 and 55 easy, we find the mediation 57.5, but this is not the case. This is the case in which the problem is the strength for the future.
And the other question I had for you, you made this point about China seeking to divide Europe and the Trump administration seeking to divide Europe. When you were president of the European Commission, though, I think Europe suffered its deepest division in post-Cold War history, which was over the war in Iraq. And I guess my question would be, how difficult was it to bring Europe back together after that old Europe, new Europe divide emerged? And do you think Europe is as cohesive or more cohesive now than it was then?
Oh, you correctly mentioned the Iraqi war, because the fighting inside the commission also was incredible, For example, Tony Blair and myself, we were very close and friends. With the Iraqi war, it was almost impossible to talk each other, because it was so. But many years has passed. In my opinion, the consequence of them has been tragic, because Middle East and the Mediterranean were devastated. But in this field, the disunion of European Union is given for granted. So I did mention foreign policy, because foreign policy will be the last point of European unity, because of the heritage of the past, because of the colonial, because of really different. So if you ask me about it, I say, look, the difference in foreign policy are still there. Tonight, the subject was next generation, let's say, the economic aspect, but defense and foreign policy are still to come, and you cannot have a common foreign policy if you still have unanimity. because every problem divides. Think to Cyprus for energy, or Greece for the policy vis-a-vis Turkey, or Israel, German problems with Israel. It's with the unanimity. I exclude that we could have a European policy. This is the great weakness of Europe.
The the question, Professor Prodi, that we're getting, the question, Professor Prodi, that we're getting from the internet is from Davide Tabarelli, and he would like for you to come back, if you would, on this conversation you had about the impact of environmental taxes on the cost structure of European business. And his question is, are the ambitious environmental targets of Europe jeopardizing European competitiveness vis-a-vis China and the United States? Could you elaborate a little more on the costs and benefits of Europe's relatively greener attitude?
This is a point I elaborated a lot. Clearly, I have also some question mark in this point, but look, we have confidence of a substantial decrease of cost of new energies, and substantial potential of very, very new energies like hydrogen or so on. And so my point is clear. If we don't have a technological progress, the problem of the cost difference will be remarkable. Will be remarkable because we have, let's say, very simple sectors in which the cost of energy is higher than the cost of labor. Let's say if you take all the, not only refinery, but pottery tiles or many chemical, so clearly if there is still a competitor using coal, will be a dramatic problem for our industry. And I am an industrial economist, and I am strongly pro-green progress. I begged the approval of Kyoto Agreement, going personally to talk with all the country, and I had the Russian approval the last day of my commission, just after. But I am also an economist, and I have to say, look, the cost of coal, the price of coal is so low, and that clearly, if we don't have some agreement, there will be a difference in competition.
I have a ton of questions for you, but I want to see if I can get somebody from the audience. I'm going to wait until I get a female hand. Bianca, thank you.
Speak loud and clear.
And into the microphone.
And into the microphone.
Hi, I'm Bianca, and I wanted to ask you, since last week,
Without the mask, please speak.
Since last week, the member states submitted their budgets, and the ECB was relatively shy in looking at the member states' budgets and calling upon fiscal expansion. And even though you talked about the turning point of the recovery plan for the EU, can we really leave the debate behind deficit spending and trying to fix our national deficits and also expanding fiscally? Can the ECB play enough of a role in trying to balance that act in a way that can bring us towards an agreement promptly and not double dip us the way we did in 2011?
So the question is, can we focus now on fiscal stimulus, or should we be worried about the increase in debts and deficits? Can monetary authorities provide the
we
stimulus
must-
that we need?
We must be worried about deficit. The only, let's say, way of decreasing our worry is that everybody is under a huge deficit, United States. So my problem is not how Europe can deal with the deficit, but how the world can deal with the deficit, because if I think to United States, if I think to most parts of European countries, Italy in particular, you see that if there is not some sort of, let's say, agreement on that, all the world economy will be in crisis, But I repeat, it's not only European problem. China, even if deficit in China is in some way transferred to the province, but is incredibly high, And so this is not a European problem only, but is a world problem. Concerning Europe in particular, clearly we shall need some moratorium or some, let's say, common action in order to avoid the negative consequence. But we are already in this aspect, The decision taken is a message that there is some sort of share of this problem, but the frugal states think that only exceptional and short time. Clearly, on the Italian side, on the Spanish side, on the Greek side, there's the hope that will be a long time. But anyway, if you want to know my opinion, is that we shall need some inflation. Don't tell to anybody else, but this is my opinion.
If I can piggyback on Bianca's question, you famously characterized the Stability and Growth Pact as stupid. And
everybody's done it. I paid my price, but now but because in the first year of university, I learned that you must have deficit or surplus depending upon the situation. And so to fix it is stupid by definition.
But this year, they activated for the first time the general escape clause that allowed them to ignore the Stability and Growth Pact. So I guess my question for you is the Stability and Growth Pact smarter now than it was when you were commission president?
Now it does not exist anymore. This is my point, But when Germany goes, violates it 3 times, how can it does not exist? You have to probably know. There will be a day in which we have to remake our common policy and goals and obligations. This I really think. But the Stability Pact, is stupid.
Lorenzo.
Thank you for being here, Professore. And very on-point question is, what do you see for the future of parties in the European context? Do you envision a truly European party rising, or do you still see these national/European parties that dominate the political scene in Europe?
Look, the traditional parties are in difficulty. Less now than 2 years ago, but still difficulties. So I don't see a European party imminent or in the foreseeable future. The only way to, let's say, create it is to have a European election not on national basis. Let's say, put it there. If you fight, if you have the fighting for the president of the commission between French socialist and the German Christian Democratic or vice versa, then you will have political parties. Till that moment, you will not have European political parties, but aggregations of different parties. But you know, it's incredible when you see that there is a debate in the Northern League to be part of the Popular Party, European Popular Party, is that the attraction in Europe is much stronger than before. Then the decision will not take, you know, but only the debate per se, because the League, the Northern League, was created just because against Europe. And this has changed.
Lasse.
Yes. You mentioned the current wave of solidarity amongst EU governments. However, at the beginning of the corona crisis, there was a rather national reflex where national governments imposed export restrictions on medical equipment. Therefore, I was wondering, in future crises, how can this be avoided?
No, in the beginning, you know, coronavirus was reputed to be only an Italian patent in Europe, you know, and so, you had different policy because it was a new experiment, you know. Now, the European policies are much more similar than before, much more similar. You have, except Sweden, no basic difference in European policy. You can close the airport or the travelers to one or to others, you know, but basically, and there are also new agreements on the vaccine purchasing and distribution with some sort of solidarity, not equal, but some sort. So I do think that a lot of progress has been done in this field. Of course, there is still a some national identities, but we had quite a number of Italian sick people going to Germany, and Germany has taken care of them. We had a lot of, say, exchange of machinery for taking care. And I repeat now, I do think that in the new competition, even this problem will receive more and more attention of cooperation, even in the sanitary problem, health problem.
Zoe.
So thank you, Mr. Prodi. Thank you very much for, should I stand up? Thank you very much for being here. I had a question on what you mentioned on the implementation phase of the Next Generation EU. Since you mentioned that only starting from next spring, the money will be dispersed, which I believe causes basically two problems. One, that it could be too late if the money, or at least it's not as timely as possible, the fiscal stimulus, especially because most of the money will be spent in years to come. And the second problem that since the money is not immediately spent, it increased the risk of governments wanting to spend then as soon as possible instead of allocating it into the investments that would be most needed or most appropriate given the kind of plan that the EU has with green digital investments. So my question is, based on your experience at the EU, how do you think they are going to tackle these two problems?
So given the way that next generation EU is organized, is the money going to be spent too late? Or even worse, is the money going to be spent badly by the governments who are trying to spend it too quickly rather than spending it more intelligently?
I don't know, honestly. I have to be honest, because it's no. For the problem of late, the problem is to know that the money will arrive, and I am not much worried of the timing. If there is, I am worried about how the money will be spent. This worries me, starting from Italy, because my opinion has always been that I think about Italy now, because I followed it. My opinion was, look, there is money, but a deep crisis. You must spend it with a dedicated to growth and to serious cost and benefit analysis. So, as a consequence, I do think that you have to concentrate the decision-making process. To be even more clear, I insisted that it was task of the Prime Minister, helped by the two Ministers of the Economy in Italy, to decide how to allocate the resources. The strategy done has been different and has been asked, let's say, to the different ministers and chief of regions, a list of investment. Now the list is 600 billion. That is 3 times more than the 200 billions. But the list is done by politicians, serious, that now they are obliged in front of their constituency of the obligation they have taken. And so my fear is that you will have some sort of sharing of the investment and not a priority list as you need. So I expressed my opinion in preference of the French decision in which the president is in power and he's resurrected the planning commission as his arm in order to implement and to make the cost analysis decision and so on and so on. So to sum up, why I'm not worried about the timing, because I am worried about the priorities of the investment taken.
Yeah, please.
So thank you so much, Professor Prodi, for being with us. And I have a question regarding European foreign policy in the Middle East. Do you think that the European Union will play a more active role with regards to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? Thank you.
So will the European Union play a more active role with regard to Israel and Palestine?
Well, no. No, because that's, yes, marginally. I mean, honestly, now the problem is the Americans come back, the American government came back, and the energy problem concerning that, they are in the hands of local or American protagonists. So I don't see any major, let us put it this way. I do hope that Europe will put more energy on the Middle East, as I try to do, because the only peacekeepers in the area, big peacekeeper, I decided them in 2008. And then there was not any more European decision. But now there is no European policy concerning Israel and Palestine, and this is more and more in the hands of American agreements, as it happened in the last months.
If I can piggyback on that question, when you were European Commission president, one of your major initiatives was to rebuild relations with Libya. And after you left being prime minister, one of your principal responsibilities was representing the United Nations in the Sahel. And so I guess I would extend the question and say, across North Africa, do you think the European Union has an effective policy or any capacity to project its interests?
Well, I have been honestly pessimistic about Israel and Palestine, and I am even more pessimistic about Libya. It's absolutely incredible that in Libya the power is in the hands of Russia and Turkey, that are far away from Europe. And if you think that Turkey has the GDP of Spain, a little less, and is such a big power in the Mediterranean, is only because of our division. We have to be clear, In Libya, I don't, I was furious because I knew Libya well. I knew Gaddafi well. When I went to Libya, when I went abroad, I always asked to talk with the opposition. In Libya, there was no opposition, but I always met the tribes, the chiefs of the tribes, because of the local power. And I did know that the war would have made this blow up, And this is what is happening. And now the big powers try to have a say in this area, and nobody does the right movement of putting around the table the 20 real lords of Libya. That is so simple, because this is Libya. This is Libya. And so you have from one side Tripoli government backed by Italy, from the other side France is backing Haftar, Germany is out of any game, and so Russia and Turkey are sharing Libya till the moment in which they will fight against each other. I don't know when, but in Nagorno-Karabakh, there is such a tension between Russia and Turkey, and Libya, there is a tension, but Europe is totally without any policy for the Mediterranean. But if you think that the French president went to Lebanon without telling anything to Italy, bombed Syria without telling to Germany. So we are still, foreign policy still.
Okay, I have two questions on my list. I'm going to go first to Moritz and then to Laura. So Moritz.
Thank you very much for doing this. I hope you can hear me well. Professor Jones' point or question is a good, segue to what I was wondering about. Over the past 4 years since the Trump administration, there has been increasing talk in Europe about, this concept of strategic autonomy, right? And my impression is that you get the sense that Europeans have somehow convinced themselves that they'll be able to, defend themselves by themselves in military terms. But as you already alluded to in Libya, and as you can see, in the Eastern Med, or when it comes to Macron's outreach to Putin, and the concerns that has led to in Central and Eastern Europe, particularly among in Poland and the Baltics, I was wondering whether those also inner European tensions are somehow a hairbringer of a return of a great game in Europe, really, in which you can see foreign policy and security policy competition between European nations taking place in Europe again. This time around, everybody just says they're conducting European foreign policy, even though they're just doing whatever they deem is, the right approach. They just all have different opinions on that.
So it's really two questions. One, can the Europeans defend themselves? And the other, are the Europeans is each European country trying to claim European, quote unquote, foreign policy as its own?
No, the Europeans, well, they can defend themselves because the income, the military production, we are very advanced, we are still for short number of months, but the biggest industrial power in the world. So we can do it, but the military budget is absolutely insufficient for that. You mentioned Libya. I have to say that even France and UK could not defeat Libya unless the Americans could have supplied bombs and communication systems. This is the real truth. And so Europe can defend itself only with the necessary increase in the budget, because technology, we have technology, possibility, but I don't see a major agreement on that, on that. Then you see that some country like the Baltic country could be, we have the eternal problems of tensions with Russia. You go to an unspecified chapter of foreign policy, of whether the Americans engage themselves not to extend NATO till the Russian border or not, and clearly the three Baltic states are still frightened by the idea of having Russia. And I have to tell you, I was honestly strongly supporting the entrance in the European Union of three Baltic states, but I didn't agree that they could come in the NATO because there are always in international policy the necessity of cautions, of let's say, and my last vote in the last government, it was the NATO meeting in Bulgaria, and I voted with France and Germany against the Bush proposal to Georgia and Ukraine in the NATO, because for a simple, so this division are effect of history, but they are not so big to, in the long run, if there is no veto effect to split Europe, or also because step by step are, you know, going down this tension slowly, and it's my opinion. Don't trust me in this case that it is, but I have the feeling that even Poland and Hungary are in some way tempering down the tension against Europe, maybe because of financial interest, maybe because in the last election the anti-European party went down, but I don't see any danger of split. I see only the paralysis of decision-making process because of unanimity. And I repeat, I was president of the commission with 15 countries. Well, many people tell me you have been wrong in anticipating the enlargement. My answer is think to Poland, if Poland could be like Ukraine today. When there is a change in history, you have to do it quickly. You know, this was my opinion, still is my opinion. And I have to tell you, frankly, in the discussion in the Commission, I was president of the Commission with 15 countries and 25 countries. The real difference and discussion were always with one country, United Kingdom. But because of the serious difference in UK policy. And I was disappointed about Brexit, but not so surprised, because it was a deep feeling of UK to have an alternative. And this is why, you know, there will be some change between Biden and Bush and Trump on this problem, because I don't think that Biden will push increase the tension between, you know, but Brexit was also because in the British spirit there was an alternative, United States. And this is the reality, you know, and so the American election will, in the long time, of course, you know, also smooth this problem.
Okay, Laura, because I mentioned you, I'm going to give you the last question, but I'm afraid, ladies and gentlemen, that we're almost out of time. So Laura, speak loudly and let's hear what you have to say.
Thank you so much for being here, Professor Prodi, and to John for organizing it. And I have two questions. The first one is if you think that if it's managed to put taxes as the Google tax or the green tax in form of own resources, if it can lead to fiscal harmonization. And the second one is that I'm curious about why did you decide to become a politician, and if after everything that you have accomplished, and went through that I suppose that it was a lot. Um, you, I don't know, feel proud and will take the same decision again?
So,
translator.
so the first question, and you have to help me with the one word, Laura. The first question is about the increase in taxes, particularly green taxes, as own resources. Whether this is a Hamiltonian moment, was that what you were asking, or what?
No. If it will help to have fiscal harmonization.
Will that result in fiscal harmonization across countries? And the second question is, why on earth did you ever become a politician?
I tell you. Fiscal harmonization. Well, yes. We cannot have a carbon tax or internet tax, let us call it this way, if we have not a total European agreement. So this is difficult to get, but this will be a fiscal harmonization. But difficult because, I wrote, there is a country like Poland. This is why answering to your question also on the costs of this, harmonization done by internet, on the cost of the green policy. Look, we have a country like Poland living on coal, and a country like Italy that does not produce 1 kilo of coal. So it's clearly. And if you have a carbon tax, you by definition harmonize the system. But the second question, I don't know why. Well, I always had a passion for politics, but I've been teaching for a long time in university. I was a late politician because but I had before a long experience because I was Minister of Industry for a while, for a few months, for a quarter of an hour, let's say. But in a very difficult moment in which I worked, but a technical minister. But for 9 years, I have been president of IRI. That was the biggest public audit company, or the biggest company in Europe, we had more than 600,000 employees, banking, highway, rider, and so clearly you enter into politics, And when but I was a politician only because of a crisis of Italian political parties. Only because there was a paralysis, and it was my strange decision. I have taken a bus traveling through Italy, and from nothing, connecting different people and parties with a basic idea. There was a long thinking about that, a basic idea. Look, Italy has been divided because of Cold War, communist and non-communist. And so the different parties, they were influenced by foreign policy mainly. When the wall disappeared, you had to, my idea was to put together the reformers and hope that the conservative could put together, let's say, to become like United States, 2 parties. And so I started to travel through the country with this simple long-term goal, listing the programs for that, health, welfare state, and so on, and so on, and so on, and so on. And I won by chance, simply because Berlusconi underestimated me He thought that my effort was ridiculous, and he was late to react. And so I won. And there was really a very successful period of my first government. Then, you know, politics is strange. I had a non-confidence vote because of the split of one part of the coalition, just after we were successful in entering into the euro. Before that, this was helping the, let's say, the unity of the coalition. And I remember that the day we entered into the euro, one of my collaborators told me, look, the shooting season will start and you are the hare. And just the day after, the emergency was not felt as important, and my government was disappearing. But the results have been very good for the almost 3 years in which I was in government. So is life. But I have not been repented to enter into politics, you know. It's been nice, very, very nice.
Professor Prodi, I want to thank you. The insights that you've offered us across a range of issues have been terrific. I'm particularly happy with Laura's final question about that personal thing, not least because I discovered this one area of failure that I think we can celebrate, and that is that you failed to make Italian politics more like the United States. And for that, I'm eternally grateful. Thank you so much.
No, it's too fast. But as I told you, Berlusconi has been the master of Trump. I was telling him I was betting for the victory of Trump. Only one, because I felt it was hitting so directly to the passions of people, because I had this experience and I won a bet. I won a bet. So it's life.
Please don't tell us your prediction for the upcoming election.
I have no prediction now.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you also in Zoom land.